This conference will now be recorded.
Hello everyone. Can you hear me? Hello. Am I audible to you all?
Hello.
Yes. Okay. Okay. So I welcome you our introductory session of MRCOG Part 2 course. It's an online based course. I think you all know about that. It's just a small introductory session. Here actually I will discuss about the course, how you can prepare and how actually the Part 2 exams will occur. So we will discuss these things and only one small topic we will discuss in here. So first I welcome you and I congratulate you those who actually passed Part 1 exam and preparing for the Part 2. And before discussing about the MRCOG course, I have to discuss about the dates of exams and the venues and the cost and all these things, how actually this exam will occur. I will discuss these things in our introductory session. So regarding the exam dates, as you know that it's occurred in the two sessions, one in the January and one in the July session. And in our next exam actually will occur in the 7th July 2020. And the booking application now open. You can book now, and it will close at 4 p.m. UK time on Thursday, 23rd April 2020. So now you can book application for Part 2 exam. And these are the venues, and you can choose any one which is actually convenient for you. For the UK people, you can book in London, Manchester, Edinburgh, or Dublin. And for the international venue, you can choose Bangladesh, Egypt, Hong Kong, India, Iraq, Myanmar, Oman, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Singapore, Sudan, UAE, and West Indies. Anyone you can choose that will be convenient for you. You can choose that one. And regarding the fees, actually the Part 2 fees gradually increasing. So in the UK and the Republic of Ireland, they have to pay about £474. And according to the country, they actually divided into the band A, band B, and band C. And band A, they have to submit £550, band B £475, band C £380, and you can check it in the website of RCOG in which bands your country is. So you can submit according to that. You can submit the fees in online, or you can send to DHL. You can send it that. But from 1st January 2018, you have to pay additional administration fees of £10 for those who do not pay their exam fees online. So it's better to send the fees in online. Otherwise, you have to pay additional £10. And I think most of you know about the exam format. You have to give a written exam. There is two paper 1 and paper 2. Paper 1 include the OBS and paper 2 include gynae. And the both paper actually cover 50% of the marks, 50% from the paper 1 and 50% from the paper 2. And each paper consists of two question formats. You have to answer about the SBA, that is a single based answer question that includes 40% of the total marks. And you have to also answer the extended matching question, that is 60% of the total marks. So that's why the EMQ is very, very important. And most of the candidates actually fail due to of EMQ. So you have to practice more and more EMQ so that you can answer most of the EMQs and you can pass, because your pass actually depend upon the EMQ. And regarding the timetable, the paper 1 and paper 2, the duration is about 3 hours, and in between there is a 1 hour gap. And in the number of questions, 50 is SBAs and 50 EMQ. Same in the paper 2, 50 SBAs and 50 EMQ. Regarding the time management, 70 minutes you can cover the, you can used for SBA and 110 minutes for EMQ, and same in the paper 2, that is 70 minutes for SBAs and 110 minutes for the EMQs. And these are the syllabus of MRCOG Part 2 exam. I think most of you know about that. So according to the module, you can see here, the module 1 includes clinical skill, module 2 teaching, appraisal and assessment, module 3 includes information technology, clinical governance and research, module 5 includes core surgical skills, module 6 includes post-operative cares, module 7 surgical procedures, module 8 antenatal care module, module 9 maternal medicine, 10 management of labor, 11 management of delivery, 12 postpartum problems, 13 gynecological problem, 14 subfertility, 15 sexual and reproductive health, 16 early pregnancy care, 17 gynecological oncology, 18 urogynecology and pelvic floor problems. So in our course, we actually teach you according to the module, and in every module we will take exams, and after the end of the session, that means after the end of the course, we will give the 2 mocks. So let's discuss one by one module. So module 1 include the clinical skills. Here they actually analyze your knowledge to rule out the pattern of symptoms and identify the risk factor in women presenting with obstetric and gynecological problem. And they also need to assess of the woman by means of clinical history taking and physical examination, and to manage the problem effectively and to communicate well with women relatives and colleagues in a variety of clinical examinations. So in the clinical skills, actually they assess your knowledge about the identification or the diagnosis of the problem, and how you can take the history, physical examination, and how you can manage the problem effectively. They actually assess these things in the module 1. That this module 1 actually covered almost all the modules, because in every module you have to take the history, you have to do the examination, you have to do the necessary investigations, and you have to manage all the modules. In module 2 is I think it's a bit difficult for all the examinees, because we are actually not that much we've known to this module. This includes teaching, appraisal and assessment. Here they actually need to understand and demonstrate the knowledge, skills and attitude of the provide appropriate teaching, learning opportunities, appraisal, assessment and mentorship, and acquire the knowledge and skills to cope with, understand the ethical and legal issues which occur during the management of obstetric and gynecological problems. So here you have to know about the teachings, that's the types of teachings, how you can provide the teaching, and what is the best way to give a teacher, and what are the best qualities that should be present in the teachers. So you have to know all these things in the teaching part. And in the appraisal part, how you can appraise one guideline or one patient information leaflet. You have to know that things, and also need to know about the legal issues and also the clinical governance part. The next one is the module 3, that is the information technology, clinical governance and the research part. And among the 2 and 3, the 3 is very, very important, because frequently they give the question from clinical governance like incident reporting, risk management. These are the things. And also here it's important that's use of IT, audits and standards, principle of data collection, storage, retrieval, analysis and presentation, and how you can write an incident form, and what are the incidents, what are the unwanted things in which you have to write down an incident form. So you have to know of that, and how you can write down an incident form, and how you can proceed for risk management. You have to know these things. And you also need to know about the research, ethical and legal issues, and also about the confidentiality. These are very, very important in this module. And 5 and 6 actually cover the core surgical skills and surgical procedures. And here you have to know about the consent, and there is an RCOG consent advice. You have to read, I think almost 6 consent advice is there, you have to read. And from there you have to know about the procedures, and the risk, that is a frequent risk, serious risk, and what are the alternatives of each procedures, you have to know from there. consent of mentally handicapped women. So when you practice in UK, so in some of the cases you can find that the patient is not capable of giving consent. So in that case, how you can take the consent? There's a talk of that. You have to read it very carefully, because this is also very important. That is how you can take a consent for a mentally handicapped woman. And there is a guideline for hysteroscopy and the laparoscopy. There's a Green-Top guideline for that. And also need to read a catheter use in gynae practice. There is a talk of that. Cesarean section, there is a very beautiful, nice guideline is there. And along with the cesarean sections, also you need to read the cesarean section in the second stage. There is a talk of that. Third degree and the fourth degree perineal tear. There's a Green-Top guideline is there. MVA, there's a talk. Hysterectomy procedures is very important. Abdominal incision, there's a talk. Enhanced recovery program. Nowadays there's very much concern about the enhanced recovery program, and you have to know also these things. There's an also scientific impact paper of enhanced recovery program. You can also read it from there. Management of Bartholin's and abscess and sterilization, it is also included in the reproductive part. And surgical management of miscarriage, minor cervical procedures, and laparotomy for ectopic pregnancy, ovarian cystectomy for benign lesion, and excision of the vulval lesion. So these are actually included in the core surgical skills and the surgical procedure. Among them, the most important is the consent for the medically handicapped woman, hysteroscopy, laparoscopy, cesarean section in the second stage, third degree, fourth degree perineal tear, MVA, abdominal incision, and enhanced recovery. These are very, very important in this module. And in the module 7, that include the post-operative care. Though this is a very small module, but is a bit tricky to answer, because they actually give the question of the EMQ question there, and they used Meuse chart in here. They can give you a Meuse chart. So in this case, you also need to know about the Meuse chart, WHO checklist. These are very important. So here you have to read the uterine perforation. There is a talk of that. Urinary tract injury in the laparoscopy, gynecological surgery. There is a talk of that. Management of thromboembolism and WHO checklist. That is also included in the core surgical skills. So you need to read it. And along with that, also need to read it, the Meuse chart, how you can read the Meuse chart. And if it is Meuse charts, it's 2, 3, 4, how you can manage that. And another very important topic, that is a nerve injury associated with gynecological surgery. There is a talk of that. So these are the things you need to read. Among them, the most important is the uterine perforation, urinary tract injury, WHO checklist, and nerve injury. Antenatal care module is the module 8. It's a very, very vast module, and I personally feel difficult to answer this question from antenatal module, because it's a bit tricky and it's very vast to answer and to read. And there's a Green-Top guideline. These are the Green-Top guideline you have that will covered in antenatal care module. That is an amniocentesis and chorionic villus sampling, placenta previa, accreta, and vasa previa, diagnosis and management. The very recent guideline is placenta previa, antepartum hemorrhage, intrauterine growth restriction, female genital mutilation, intrauterine fetal death, reduced fetal movements, monochorionic twin pregnancy, breast cancer in the pregnancy. So these included in the Green-Top guideline. And when you read the guideline, you can see that initially you face difficulty, because it's a very vast guideline. So many things are there. So first things you have to read from the guideline, that is the introductory part, because in introductory part there is they include some incidence and prevalence. You can make your own note of incidence and prevalence from there, and then you have to read the highlighted point on there, and they actually this is the main guideline, and then in the below part of the highlighted part, they actually discuss about that part. So you have to first read the highlighted point, and at the end of the guideline you can see there is a chart. What you can do, that you can print out all the charts together, so that in every day you can read the chart, because charts are very important. They frequently give question from the chart. So any charts, any tables, you can print it, and you can collect it together, so that in every day you can read it, because the charts and tables, these are very, very important for exam. So this is the Green-Top guideline that we cover in antenatal care module. And in the NICE guideline, you have to read the antenatal care diabetes in pregnancy, hypertension in pregnancy, multiple pregnancy, preterm labor and prom. And recently they also include one guideline in the RCOG, that is, so in the GTG, that is preterm labor and prom. So also we will cover this in the antenatal care module, and among them the most important is the diabetes, hypertension, multiple pregnancy, and also preterm labor and prom. And also another is that fetal infection and fetal medicine, you need to cover it in the antenatal care module. In the fetal infection, these are the topics you have to read, that is chicken pox, herpes, GVS, malaria, HIV in pregnancy, CMV, parvovirus and Zika virus. Today I will discuss one small infection, that is in chicken pox. Today I will discuss these things, how you can read a guideline and how you can answer the question. I will discuss this thing in the chicken pox today. And the fetal medicine, you have to cover the anencephaly, congenital diaphragmatic hernia, Down syndrome, and echogenic bowel, Edwards syndrome, and Patard syndrome. So when we discuss this antenatal care module in our course, you can see that it's actually we divided the course of antenatal module in a 4 classes, because it's very vast. So we have to cover it in 4 classes, and also the maternal medicine. This is also very vast. So we have to cover all the cases within 4 classes. So these are the talks that includes the antenatal care module. So in the 2013 talk, you have to read the pregnancy outcome following the bariatric surgery. So now also they are very much concerned about the obesity. So another point I missed here, that is the GTG guideline, that you also need to read about the obesity in the pregnancy, because obesity is a very recent guideline. You need to read it. And nowadays they are very much concerned about the obesity. So the bariatric surgery is also a very important topic you have to read. Postpartum hypertension. In the talk 2014, you have to read the polyhydramnios. In 15, prenatal diagnosis in modern era. In the 17, you have to read the DK, that is diabetic ketoacidosis, gynae cancer in pregnancy, domestic violence. Nowadays, they are very much concerned about the domestic violence. So they can give us small questions like the incidence of domestic violence. These are the questions they can give you. And a child sexual exploitation. This is also very important. Sexual violence important, and also CMV. You have to read it from talk. And for the talk 2018, you have to read the diabetic insipidus and fibroid in pregnancy. So these are the topics in antenatal care module you have to read. So you can see that is a very vast one. So in our course, we divided into the 4 classes to cover all the cases. And in the module 9 is also very vast, that is maternal medicine module. And we divided it in according to the system. Like in the connective tissue disease, you have to read SLE, rheumatoid arthritis, antiphospholipid antibody syndrome, TOG, that is inflammatory bowel disease in pregnancy, cystic fibrosis in pregnancy. For hormonal disease, you have to read the thyroid disease in pregnancy. There is a talk of that. Cardio and the respiratory system, you have to read the cardiac disease in pregnancy. Pulmonary hypertension, Marfan syndrome, TOG. These are the TOG you have to cover for cardio and respiratory system. That is asthma in pregnancy, MI in pregnancy, obesity in pregnancy, and contraception in cardiac disease. And these are the topics you have to read. And for the maternal medicine part, you need to read a book that is called Nelson PRC. We will provide you the soft copy of that, so that you can print the copy and you can read it from there. And for the hematology part, you have to read the Green Top guideline, that is thalassemia, sickle cell disease, inherited bleeding disorder, and also the iron deficiency anemia. There is a talk of that. And phenylketonuria, there is a talk. Thromboembolism, this is very, very important. There is a 2 guideline of thromboembolism. One is how you can prevent, that is a prophylaxis. One is how you can treat any embolism case. So this is very important. You have to read it. And for the neurological part, you have to read the epilepsy in pregnancy. And from talk, you have to read this the spinal cord injury in pregnancy, headache in pregnancy, and intracranial hypertension in pregnancy. And for the hepatic and the skin, you have to read Green Top guideline of obstetric cholestasis, skin eruption in pregnancy. There's a talk. It's very important, because they can give you a question, like they can give you the symptom and they can ask you about the diagnosis. So the skin eruption is very important. Hepatitis B and hepatitis C virus in pregnancy, and also that is acute fatty liver in pregnancy. Sometimes I saw one question of this acute fatty liver of pregnancy management. So it's also very important. You have to read it. And for the nephrology part, the UTI in pregnancy, you have to read it from Nelson Piercy, and acute kidney injury in pregnancy, organ transplantation in pregnancy, there is a talk of that, and chronic kidney disease in pregnancy also there is in talk. So in the nephrology part, the most important is the organ transplantation and the CKD. And for the surgical cases, you have to read appendicitis in pregnancy, there is a talk of that, adnexal mass in pregnancy, there is a talk, and fibroid in pregnancy also I already told you that there's a talk you have to read. So among them, the most important part of the maternal medicine you have to cover, that is antiphospholipid antibody, IBD in the pregnancy, cystic fibrosis, thyroid disease. And for the cardiac part, you have to read the asthma, Marfan syndrome, pulmonary hypertension, obesity and pregnancy. And for the hematological part, the GTG guideline you have to read very carefully. Thromboembolism. For the neurological part, epilepsy, headache in pregnancy. And for the hepatic and skin, the skin eruption in pregnancy and obstetric cholecystitis. These are very important. You have to read. And in the nephrology part, the important topic is organ transplantation and CKD, and surgical. The important, all three is important. You have to read it. So if you in the talk part, how you can read the talk? Actually, in the talk, the main thing is that if you can cover the whole talk, you have to read the introductory part and you have to read the box part, because they actually give the question from the box. So you have to read the box part of the talk. And for the NICE guideline, when you read the NICE guideline, I personally feel that it's little bit confusing. So what you can do, that you can make your own notes of the NICE guideline, because NICE guideline is very difficult to read from the guideline because it's very confusing. They can actually they write the same thing frequently, that makes you confused. So what you can do, that you can make your own notes of the NICE guideline and you can read it. And for the green tub light guideline, I told you that you can read the introductory part and you can make your own notes of the incidence and prevalence from the green tub guideline, and you should follow the incidence and prevalence from the green tub guideline, not from talk or anywhere. So the green tub guideline incidence is very important, and then you have to read the highlighted point on there. And also lastly, there is one chart in most of the guideline. You can see there is a chart of that. You need to read that also. So these are the things you need to read from the green tub guideline. In the module 10, we cover the management of labor. It's very, very important, and actually in the overseas candidates will face problem to answer from the management of labor module and the delivery module, because we actually not manage the case like them. Because we actually, in some cases, we are very liberal. We actually directly send them to go for a cesarean section. But you can, when you read the NICE guideline of the interpartum care module, then you can see that there's a very big difference from our management and their management. So this is very difficult for answering for us. And one thing is that most of the labor module, they gave the question that is EMQ part. So for the EMQ, the labor module and the delivery module is very, very important. They can give you the scenario and they can ask you about the management of that, and or they can give you the CTG plot and they ask you about the management. So the CTG and internet care module is the Bible of the labor module. So you have to read it very, very carefully. So for the NICE guideline, you have to read the induction of labor. CTG is very, very important. Every day, when you rise in the morning and to brush, you can print out of the CTG plot and you can read it when you brush your teeth in the morning, because it's very important. Because frequently they give you the question from the CTG, and that will be the EMQ part. So that's why for the EMQ part, to pass the EMQ in OBS part, it's very important that you need to you have a very good knowledge about CTG and the internatal care module of NICE guideline. And the internatal care module is very, very vast, like almost more than 100 pages in there. So it's very important to read. And regarding the green tub guideline, another important topic is the external cephalic version and the breech presentation. And there's one talk that is mifepristone and misoprostol at the late IOD. So among them, the most important is the CTG and International Care Module, ECV, and the bridge presentation. And for the management of delivery, that is module 11, in the GTG guideline, you have to read the that is an operative vaginal delivery, that is an forceps and ventouse is very important. Third degree, fourth degree perineal tear, that is the degree of episiotomy, how you can do the episiotomy, how you can repair the episiotomy, and in the third degree, fourth degree perineal tear, what the structure included in there, how you can repair the perineal tear, third degree and fourth degree perineal tear. And these are important in this case. Shoulder dystocia, there you know that it's an obstetric emergency, so there's a very beautiful chart in the guideline. You have to read it how you can manage a shoulder dystocia one by one point. Like first you have to call for help. These are the things you have to do. Then you have to do the macroverts. Then you have to give an axial traction. So according to that you have to follow. So the shoulder dystocia, that chart is very important. And another one is the VVAC. In the VVAC, actually important for the incidence and prevalence. There's in so many incidence and prevalence in the VVAC, and there's in one chart that is VVAC and ERCP, that is elective cesarean section, the difference between two of them. So these are very important, and VVAC is very important for the incidence and prevalence. And another one is the cord prolapse. Cord prolapse also it's an obstetric emergency, so how you can manage the obstetric emergency, and there's an also one chart is there, you have to read it from there. And there's one talk for cesarean section in the second stage of labor. As you know that it's a very tricky operation and very difficult, and how you can manage that and how you can prevent the cesarean complication during cesarean section at second stage, and what are the things you have to follow. So that's why you have to read the talk of that. And malposition of the fetal head at the second stage, though it's not very important. So regarding the management of delivery, you have to, the most important is operative vaginal delivery, shoulder dystocia, VVAC, third degree, fourth degree perineal tear, cord prolapse, and cesarean section at second stage. In the postpartum problem, that is module 12, for the Green-Top guideline, you have to read the blood transfusion in obstetrics, maternal collapse in pregnancy and postpartum. It's very important, like when the patient, you see any patient in a collapse stage, so how you can manage. There's a very beautiful chart. There's a two chart in there. You have to read it, and how you can manage, and like according to the cause after the resuscitation, you have to manage according to cause. Like if it is like an anaphylactic or if any kind of anesthetic toxicity, or it may be due to any cardiac cause. So according to the cause you have to manage. So it's very beautiful. You have to read all by all in there. And another one is the bacterial sepsis. There's in two guidelines. One is during pregnancy, the bacterial sepsis, and following the delivery. So these two you have to read. And there's an also sepsis 6 bundle. You have to follow that. It's very beautiful. You have to read these things from there. And PPH management. In the PPH management, actually, they give you the question from the chart. There's a long chart is there. You have to read the PPH from management from there, because at each and every part of that chart is very important, like the dose, like the duration of treatment, how you can manage step by step. You have to read and you have to answer the question according to that. And from the postpartum problem, PPH is very important for EMQ. So for the EMQ part, you have to read the PPH very carefully. So regarding the NICE, the perinatal mental health, nowadays they are very much concerned about the perinatal mental health. Now how you can manage, what is the mother baby unit, how they can manage the patient in the mother baby units, and what are the drugs actually you can give during pregnancy or following the delivery, what the drugs you have to stop it during delivery, during pregnancy. These are the things actually you need to read from the NICE guideline. And there is one talk of postpartum psychosis. As you know, in the following the delivery, the mental problem, they divided into the postpartum blues, depression, and the psychosis. So how you can classify that and how you can manage that, and what are the incidents, which one is very common. You have to read these things from the postpartum mental disorder, that is perinatal mental health. So among them, the most important is the PPH, collapse, and bacterial sepsis in the pregnancy, and the perinatal mental health. Next one is the module 13, that is gynecological problem. So here you have to read the ovarian cyst in perimenopausal women and ovarian cyst in the postmenopausal women. These two is very important for EMQ part. So first you have to find out the which is very important for the EMQ part, and you have to read each and every line of that guideline, and you have to practice more and more. So what you can do that you can make your partner from very beginning. When you start your reading, you have to make your partner. You can make a schedule of your own, and every day you can discuss one or two guidelines along with your partner. That will help you to memorize the guideline. And what you can do, and every day when you read the guideline or when you complete one module, 2 days you can keep for revising, and after that you can practice the question every day. You have to practice 20 questions every day by yourself, so that you can memorize the guideline by yourself. So this is the very a good way to pass the exam, because if you are not very much sick during your initial period of reading, so cannot pass in the exam. And nowadays you can see the pass rate of part 2 is very low, and they are very much strict about the percentage of passing. So that's why you have to more focus on that. So first you have to identify which are the important topics of the module, and you have to set a partner, dedicated partner for you, and every day you have to read the guideline, and every day you have to discuss, and every day you can also discuss the question in between. You like you can one day you can discuss the question of strategy, one day you can discuss from one book like Andrew Caesar, another day you can discuss the question from the Amanda Jones. Like this way you can discuss. So that's why you need a very dedicated partner. And another one is the that is the premenstrual tension syndrome. This is also very important topic. And chronic pelvic pain, endometrial hyperplasia. Endometrial hyperplasia is also very important topic. And also you can see the EMQ question from endometrial hyperplasia, pelvic congestion syndrome. And in the NICE you have to read the that is heavy menstrual bleeding and the menopause. These two is very important for your exam, because they can give you the question. And along with heavy menstrual bleeding, there's two talk you have to cover. That is not one is the non-surgical management of heavy menstrual bleeding, and the surgical management of the heavy menstrual bleeding, that is EOE, that is uterine embolization, and also the endometrial ablation. So there's a two talk of that that is also included in heavy menstrual bleeding. In the menopause part, there's a two talk. One is the HRT and the non-pharmacological management of postmenopausal syndrome. These also you need to read it very carefully. Another one is a psychosexual problem, that is a vulvodynia vaginismus. That's also very important. Uterine fibroid, osteoporosis, and also the premature ovarian failure. So among this, the most important is the ovarian cyst in perimenopausal and postmenopausal women, endometrial hyperplasia, premenstrual tension syndrome, and heavy menstrual bleeding, menopause, and also the premature ovarian failure. These are very important. You have to read in the gynecological problem. When you read one module, first read the main important topics, and then you can read the other topics. And in the infertility, it's actually a very small one, but it's very important module. So in the GTG, you have to read the that is ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome. It's a very beautiful guideline. I personally actually love this guideline. Very beautifully they written how you can manage an ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome. Like they divided it in the mild, moderate, severe form and the critical form. And most of the question actually came like they can give you a scenario, and they will ask you about the types of the ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome, whether it is milder one, whether it's moderate one, whether it's severe one, whether it's critical one, and how you can manage. So you have to read from the guideline, that is how what is the classification of the ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome and how you can manage the ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome. So the next one is the PCOS. There's a long term that is actually in the PCOS, the green term guideline. They actually focused on the long term effect of the PCOS, like the endometrial hyperplasia, the cardiac problem, type 2 diabetes mellitus. This can be, and also the endometrial carcinoma. This can happen in the long term effect of the PCOS. So these are actually in the GTG guideline. They actually focus on these topics. You have to read it from there also. Another one is the endometriosis. Endometriosis, actually you have to read it also from the ESRE guideline. So this is also you need to cover from there. And like if how you can manage a milder form of endometriosis, extensive form of endometriosis, and you know that the size of the that is endometrioma actually depends upon actually the management depends upon the size of the endometrioma. So according to that you have to manage. So these are the things you need to read from the endometriosis. And in the infertility there is a very vast guideline of NICE. You have to read it from there, and this is very important. You have to read it from the this NICE guideline infertility. The talk they cover the male infertility. As you know that there is an semen analysis parameter. You have to read it very carefully because they will give you the parameter and they will ask you about the management. So the parameter is very important, and also the artificial reproductive technique. So among them, the most important is the GTG guideline, NICE guideline, and also the male infertility. And in the module 15, that will cover the sexual and the reproductive health, there is one contraception guideline, that is FRSH guideline. You have to read it. From there, you have to read the emergency contraception and also the individual contraception like oral contraception, injectable contraception, barrier methods, and also intertwined device system. So you have to read it from there. So these are the things you have to read from the contraception part from the FRSH guideline. And from the GTG, you have to read the chronic PID, and also you need to cover the sexual transmitted diseases from the BASH guideline. That will include acute PID, genital ulcer, discharge, and HIV. These are very vast. Like in the ulcer, you have to read the herpes. You have to read the in the herpes chancroid, Haemophilus ducrei. You have to read it from there. In the genital discharge, you have to read the Candida, trichomoniasis, and bacterial vaginosis. These things you have to read it from there. And the HIV part is also very important. And in the early pregnancy, care, in the NICE guideline, you have to read the miscarriage and ectopic pregnancy, like the management of the, especially for the ectopic pregnancy management, when you can give the medical management, when you have to give the surgical management, and in the surgical management, when you have to give the management of, that is salpingotomy, or when you will do the salpingectomy. And these are the things you have to read from there. And what are the success rate, and what are the chance of second operation, or what are the chance of second injection in case of medical management. So these are the also need to read it from the management of ectopic pregnancy. And in the RCOG, there is one guideline of recurrent pregnancy loss. From there you can read the causes of recurrent pregnancy loss and how you can manage that. And also the management of tubal pregnancy, in the management of tubal pregnancy, they actually divided the pregnancy according to the location, like whether it is in the ampullary region, whether it is SMIC point, whether it is in the cervical region, whether it is in the abdominal pregnancy, and according to that, they actually manage the case. So it is very important, this GTG guideline, this tubal pregnancy, because they can give you the findings and they can ask you about the diagnosis. So that's why they're very important. You have to read the findings, and according to that you have to give the diagnosis, and also you have to manage according to the location. And another important topic, they are very much found this topic. Frequently, the question came from the topic, that is a nausea and the vomiting in pregnancy, specifically hyperemesis gravidarum, how you can manage the case. So this is also very important one topic. And in the good practice, you have to read the miscarriage, because there is one law of miscarriage, that is we call the abortion law. There is a 5 law, A, B, C, D, E. You have to read it when you have to provide when you can do the miscarriage according to the law A, B, C, D, E. So you have to read it, and they will ask you the question from there. And another, there's some talk you have to read, that is a medical management of abortion and MVA, manual vacuum aspiration, cesarean scar ectopic, and teenage pregnancy. So they are also very much concerned about the teenage pregnancy. This is also very important. So among them, the most important is the miscarriage, ectopic pregnancy, recurrent pregnancy loss, nausea, and vomiting in pregnancy. And in the gynecology, oncology, these are actually the part of the subspecialization, like infertility, gynecological oncology, urogynecology. These are actually the part of subspecialization. So they actually not give the questions, very difficult question in there. So only a basic things they actually give from there. So you only need the basic things from this gynecological oncology part. In the gynecological oncology part, the main important they actually focus, that is the pre-malignant conditions in here, like the ovarian cyst, endometrial hyperplasia, or any cervical abnormalities. They actually focused on there. you can see the most question will came from the pre-malignant part, then the malignant part, because malignant part is completely the sub-specialized part. So they're not they actually not give the question very difficult question from there. In the oncology part, if they give the question from the cancer, they actually give the question like the staging, the 5-year survival rate. So you have to read these things from there: the staging, survival rate, overall management of a cancer, like a CS service according to stage, how you can manage. So these things they actually give the from the cancer part, but they give the details questions, like a vast question, a major part of the question from the pre-malignant part, like in the cervical screening, if there's any kind of abnormalities, how you can manage, the endometrial hyperplasia, or the ovarian cyst in the premenopausal, postmenopausal women, they actually give the question from there. So you have to more focus on the pre-malignant part than the malignancy. So in the colposcopy, there is one very vast guideline, that is NHS cervical screening guideline. It's very important for the oncology part, very, very, very important. And you can see in the guideline, it is more than 100 pages. And in the last page, you can see there are some charts, like 4 or 5 charts. What you can do that, you can print off that chart and every day you have to read. Otherwise, it's very difficult to memorize and it's very difficult to answer, because in the oncology, the EMQ part will come from the NHS cervical screening program. So this is very, very important for your exam. And there's one sign guideline for CS cervix. You have to read it from there. And ovarian tumor, there's a nice guideline. And for the board, nowadays they are very much concerned about the borderline ovarian tumor. There's a talk. It's very beautiful. You can read it from there. And also the risk reducing bilateral salpingo-oophorectomy, that is a talk, because if the patient is carrying a BRCA1, BRCA2 genes, then there's an option that they can go for a surgery that is called bilateral salpingo-oophorectomy for reducing their risk of ovarian tumor. So this is nowadays they are very much concerned about these things. So you have to read it from there. And another one is the postmenopausal bleeding. There's one talk up there that is also very important, because there's the postmenopausal bleeding. The most of the case that is actually the simpler one, like only the 10% cases it can be associated with the ovarian cancer. So in the postmenopausal bleeding, you have to read the cause of the postmenopausal bleeding, and when a patient comes to you with a postmenopausal bleeding, how you can manage. There's a very beautiful chart on that. You have to read it from there. Endometrial carcinoma, you have to read a BGCS guideline. Only the basic things you have to read it from there. And vulval carcinoma, there's a Grintop guideline, and benign lesion of the vulva. It's a very, 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 very famous topic of gynecological oncology for your exam. You have to read the benign lesion of the vulva, because in the benign lesion, they can give you the scenario and they can ask you about the diagnosis, or sometimes they can ask you about the management, and also the chances of carcinoma, or how you can monitor the case, the prognosis. These things they actually ask, and also sometimes they can provide you the picture and they can ask you about the diagnosis. So the picture is also very important in the benign lesion of the vulva. So among these, the main important topic is colposcopy, that is an NHS cervical screening guideline, borderline ovarian tumor, risk reducing BSO, and postmenopausal bleeding, and benign lesion of the vulva. These are very, 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 very important in the gynecological oncology module. And in the urogynecology and pelvic floor problem, I personally love this module. I don't know why, but I feel more comfortable in this module. So it's not that much a very vast topic, but it's a smaller one. The main important thing you have to read, that is a NICE guideline, because everything is written on the NICE guideline. It's very vast. You have to read it from there. Like what is the stress incontinence, what is the overactive bladder, and how you can differentiate and how you can manage according to that. And you have to manage stage by stage, like if it is an initial period, how you can manage, and if it is not improving with the simpler measures, then how you can manage the case, and what are the surgical procedure, what are the success rate, what are the complications associated with the surgical procedures. These are the things. And the one important things, you have to read the bladder diary, because sometimes they can give you a bladder diary, they can ask you about the diagnosis, or they can ask you about the management. So you have to also need to read, or how to read a bladder diary. This is very important. And how to read and that is urodynamic chart. So urodynamic chart, because most of the cases you can see they can give you a chart and they can ask you whether they can ask you about the diagnosis, or they can ask you about the management. So in the urogynecology, the main part is you have to read the bladder diary, you have to read the urodynamic charts, and also need to manage the case step by step. That is very important in here. And in the TOG, you have to read the overactive bladder and vaginal mesh in the prolapse surgery. That's not that much important. In the Gintop guideline, you have to read the post-cystectomy valve prolapse. That is very important. And in the post-cystectomy valve prolapse, how you can manage if a patient is in the postmenopausal stage, or if the patient is in a very in a late stage, like she's in associated with other comorbidity, or she's not suitable for the surgery, how you can manage the case. And according to the stage, like in the initial stage, you can ask her to do a pelvic floor exercise, or you can give her a ring pressure, or in the advanced stage, you have to advise her to go for a surgery. And there's an option for the surgery for her, like one is the anterosacral colpoplexy, another one is the sacrospinous fixation. And if the patient is sexually active, then you can't advise her to go for a sacrospinous fixation, because it can shorten the vaginal length, and she can face dyspareunia. So in that case, you have to advise her to go for an anterosacral colpoplexy. So what is the procedures, and what are the success rate, what are the complications? These are the things you need to read from post-cystectomy valve prolapse. So among them, the most important is the urogynecology NICE guideline. I think it's almost cover almost the 90% of the part of the urogynecology and pelvic floor module. So you have to read it very carefully from there. And another one is the post-cystectomy valve prolapse. So this is all about the whole module, and what actually we'll do in our course. That as you know, that is an online based course, and we will discuss the each and every module. And after the end of the module, we will give you one exam, and you have to give it that. And at the end of our course, we will give you the 2 mocks, and you have to also need to appear on that mock, so that you can assess yourself that where you have to read, and how that is you can assess yourself. That's also important. So these are the important things you have to do. And in our course, also we will discuss the strategy questions, so that you can also assess yourself, and you can understand how actually the question came in the exam. So this is also important, because in every module we will discuss the strategy question along with the guideline. So this is all. I think that is also very important. That will also give you an idea that how you can answer the question, how actually the question will came in the exam. So that will also give you an idea about that, and you need not to read the strategy from anywhere. We will provide you the questions from the strategy in here. And if any part of or any important topic, you have to read it from the strategy. Also we need to tell you, also we will tell you on that in our course, that this part is you have to read it from the strategy. So these are the things in our course. So anybody have any question? Okay, so we can move to a it's a one guideline. That is a Gintop guideline, a very small one. We will discuss, so that you can get an idea how we actually discuss the module, and how we'll discuss the guideline. So the chicken pox in the pregnancy, as you know, that is a very common one, and it's an infection that is caused by a virus. We call it varicella zoster virus, and it's a DNA virus. And you know that the chickenpox usually transmitted by the respiratory droplets, or by the personal contact with the vesicle, or indirectly by the fomite, like any kind of skin, hair, clothing, or any bedding. So it can be transmitted to the respiratory droplet. It can be transmitted by the personal contact with the vesicle, or indirectly by the fomite. And overall incubation period is very important. You have to read it. That is 1 to 3 weeks. And how long the patient is infectious. This question came in your exam. That is, it's 48 hours, that is 2 days before the rash appears, and continues to be infectious until the vesicles crust over. That means the patient is infected 2 days before the rash appears, and until the crust over, the patient is infectious. So in that period, you have to quarantine the case. Okay, so this is the important things you have to read from the chicken pox. So regarding the symptoms, as you know, any kind of viral infection, they have give the flu-like symptoms like the fever, malaise, rashes, There's an atypical feature of masses, like initially it will be the maculopapular, followed by a vesicular rash, and lastly that will be crushed over before healing. And this vesicle usually crushed over within 5 days. So that means that if you see any question that the patient is suffering from fever, rashes, and the rash is initially maculopapular, now it become vesicular, so then you can understand that it's a case of chicken pox. And overall incidence is about 3 in every 1000 pregnancy. That means it's not that much common, but it's very complicated. It's very risky if it is occurring during pregnancy, because so many complications can be associated with chicken pox in pregnancy, and it is more susceptible the tropical and the subtropical countries. So how you can prevent the varicella? So varicella, you can prevent it by the varicella vaccination. As you know, it's a live attenuated vaccine. You can give it in the pre-pregnancy and the postpartum period. In the postpartum period, it's completely safe. If the patient, even if the patient is breastfeeding, you can give this vaccine, and you have to give a 2 dose, that is 4 to 8 weeks apart. You have to give it, and as you know, that is a live attenuated vaccine, so you have to advise them to avoid pregnancy 4 weeks after completion of 2 doses of vaccine, to avoid the contact with susceptible pregnant women, as there is a chance of post-vaccination rash can appear. So after completion of the dose of the vaccine, you have to advise them to avoid pregnancy for 4 weeks. That means for 1 month they have to avoid, because it's a live attenuated vaccine. And how you can manage a case of chicken pox in pregnancy? So in the antenatal period, if the patient will come, and you have to ask them whether she has any kind of previous chicken pox or not. And if it is not, no history of any chicken pox or shingle, then you have to ask to avoid the contact, because if there is any kind of contact, as you know, that there is a chance of transmission to the respiratory droplet. That means it is a very highly infectious disease. So and it is very contagious disease, so you have to advise them to avoid any kind of contact if there is no history of any kind of chicken pox or shingles. And one question in the question, if you see that, so sometimes they give you like the patient have an exposure to a chicken pox patient, and she's very much worried about that. So what is the next management for in that case? So then you have to ask her whether she is having any history of chicken pox before. If it is not, then you have to check the varicella zoster immunity, and if the patient is non-immune, then you have to give her varicella zoster immunoglobulin. That will be effective up to 10 days after contact. Okay, that means if the patient have any history of any contact with the chicken pox, then you have to check the varicella zoster immunity. And if the patient is non-immune, then you have to give the varicella zoster immunoglobulin, and that will be effective to 10 days after contact. And after receiving of the varicella zoster, then how long she is potentially infectious? If she received varicella zoster immunoglobulin, then she is infectious up to 8 to 28 days after exposure. But if it is not receiving varicella zoster immunoglobulin, then 8 to 21 days after exposure. That means after receiving the immunoglobulin, there's a more days of infections, like 8 to 21 days. And not receiving the immunoglobulin, that will the infections is only for 8 to 21 days. That means in that period of time, you have to advise them to contact with other pregnant women, because in that period she is infectious, so she can transmit the disease to the other. So she should avoid the contact with other children and also other pregnant women. And second dose of the varicella zoster immunity, if further exposure will occur, then you have to give that is in 3 weeks after the last dose. So if she's any history of any second time, if she's any history of any chicken pox patient, so you can give another varicella zoster immunoglobulin. That should be 3 weeks after the last dose. That means in this slide you can see that if a patient come to you and she is worried about, because she is in a history of exposure to a chicken pox patient, first you have to do a check, you have to do a immunity testing, that is a varicella zoster immunity. You have to check, and if you see that she is non-immune, then you have to give a varicella zoster immunoglobulin, and that will be effective to 10 days after contact. And you have to advise them to avoid any pregnant woman and also the child, because she is highly infectious. In case of those patients who are receiving the immunoglobulin for 8 to 28 days, and those who are not receiving the immunoglobulin, that is about 8 to 21 days. And if she is in any history of another exposure, then you can give a immunoglobulin 3 weeks after the last dose. So if she develops the chicken pox, these are the risks related to the pregnancy. Like there is a very high risk of pneumonia. Like about, you can see it is about 10 to 14% of the cases. There is a chance of hepatitis, encephalitis, and death. So that means that there is also a chance of death event. So you can avoid the patients. Like if she's developing the chicken pox, you have to avoid them. Like if she's feeling breathlessness or breathing difficulty, jaundice, or any kind of seizure, she should come hospital immediately, because there's a high chance of complication, and there's an also high chance of maternal mortality. And for the fetal, there's a chance of fetal varicella syndrome, congenital varicella syndrome, and neonatal varicella. That in combination is called a varicella infectious of newborn. So how you can manage this case if the patient is suffering from chicken pox in pregnancy? So first you have to contact the GP, and you have to advise them to avoid the contact with the other pregnant women and the neonates until the lesion have crusted over. That is usually 5 days after the onset of rashes. That means, as I told you, that's she's infectious 2 days before the rash appear, and when the rash is crusted over, and it is usually takes about 5 days. So you can advise them to avoid the contact with the other pregnant women, the neonate, in that period of time. And in these cases, you have to give an oral acyclovir, because that will reduce the severity of the infections. So you have to give an 800 milligram 5 times a day for 5 days, and you have to provide that within 24 hours of onset of rashes. And that is also very important. The oral acyclovir is not licensed in the pregnancy, and in case of severe form, you have to give an IV acyclovir. Okay, so the first thing, you have to advise them to avoid contact, and then you can give an acyclovir. And also need to inform her that it's not licensed, but it's completely safe in the pregnancy, and that will reduce the transmission, and that will also reduce the severity of the diseases. And also need to memorize the dose, that is 800 milligram 5 times a day of 5 days, and she should start it within 24 hours of the onset of rashes. And when you have to refer the case in a group of doctor, that is multidisciplinary team, that will include your obstetric consultant, that is your infectious disease specialist, and sometimes intensive specialist you have to include in here. So in that case, if there's any kind of respiratory symptom, as I told you, there's a chance of pneumonia about 10 to 14% of the cases. Any neurological symptoms, because there's a chance of encephalitis, any hemorrhagic rashes, because it can involve the liver as well. Dense rashes with or without the mucosal lesions. In that case, you have to refer the case to the hospital. And who smokes cigarette, because in that case, there's a chance of pneumonia is more. Who has a chronic lung disease with immunocompromised, and if it is occurring in the second half of the pregnancy, because in the second half of the pregnancy, the rate of complication is very high. So in these cases, you have to refer the case to the hospital so that they can evaluate by the MDT. So when you can deliver the case, ideally minimum of 7 days should be elapsed between the onset of rashes and delivery. That means you have to wait for another 7 days between the onset of rashes and delivery. And epidural and spinal anesthesia can be undertaken. A site of free of cutaneous lesion should be undertaken to choose the needle placement. That means you can provide her a epidural or spinal, but the site of lesion should be free from any cutaneous. Site of injection should be free from any kind of cutaneous lesion. And regarding the risk of pregnancy, in the first 28 of weeks of pregnancy, there is a very small risk of fetal varicella syndrome that will include the skin scarring, eye defect that include microphthalmia, chorioretinitis, and cataract, limb hypoplasia, neurological abnormalities that will include the microcephaly, cortical atrophy, mental retardation, dysfunction of the bowel and the bladder. So in the first 28 weeks, there is a small chance of fetal varicella syndrome. So you have to do anomaly scan in that time, because there's a chance of microcephaly, and sometimes there's also a chance of eye problem, limb hypoplasia. This can also occur, and there's also a chance of dysfunction of the bowel and bladder. So in that case, you have to refer the case to the fetal-maternal unit at 16 to 20 weeks or 5 weeks after the infection for discussion and detailed ultrasound scan. That means in that case, that period of time, you have to refer the case so that they will do a thorough scan to rule out whether the patient is suffering from, whether the baby is suffering from any kind of congenital anomaly. But if it is occurring the last 4 weeks of the pregnancy, there is a significant risk of varicella infection of the newborn, mostly within 7 days of the onset of rashes, or if the mother develops rashes 7 days after the delivery. That means there is a high risk of infections in the newborn, mostly if the delivery occurs within 7 days of the rashes, or if the mother develop rashes 7 days after the delivery. That means if the delivery occurs within 7 days, or if the mother develop the rashes 7 days after the delivery, there is a high risk of varicella infection. So planned delivery should be avoided for at least 7 days after onset of maternal rash. That means you have to wait for 7 days after the onset of rashes. Neonatology should be informed of the birth of the baby, because to rule out whether the baby is suffering from any varicella, you have to involve the neonatologist during the delivery. So that means if regarding the risk, so if it is occur in the first 28 weeks, there is a chance of small varicella syndrome. That means it can cause some congenital malformation. So you have to refer this case to the fetal-maternal unit at 16 to 20 weeks or 5 weeks after the infections to rule out any kind of anomalies by doing a detailed ultrasound scan. In the last 4 weeks, there is also a chance of varicella infection of the newborn, mostly if the baby is delivered within 7 days after onset of rashes, or if the mother developed rashes 7 days after the delivery. And so that to prevent that chance of infections, you have to wait for 7 days after the onset of maternal rashes. And neonatology should be informed of the birth of the babies. So the first thing is that if the patient is exposed to any kind of chickenpox patient, so first you have to do the varicella zoster immunoglobulin. If it is non-immune, then you have to give the varicella zoster immunoglobulin within 10 days. That will be effective after 10 days, and it is potentially infectious if she received varicella zoster immunoglobulin for 8 to 28 days. If she is not receiving any immunoglobulin, that is about 8 to 21 days. And if she is in any history of repeat exposure, then you can give a varicella zoster immunoglobulin second dose 3 weeks after the last dose. And these are the risks. The most important risk is the maternal risk, that is pneumonia 10 to 14%, hepatitis, encephalitis, and death. And regarding the management of chickenpox during pregnancy, first you have to contact to the GP, and they should avoid the contact with other pregnant women and the neonatal, because in that period of time, mostly within the first 5 days of onset of rashes, there is a chance of infection, so they should avoid in that time. And they should take an oral acyclovir, though it's not licensed in the pregnancy, but it's completely safe in the pregnancy. And they should take 800 milligram 5 times a day for 5 days, and they should take it within 24 hours of the onset of rashes. And in case of severe form, they should take IV acyclovir. And for the referral, if any kind of respiratory symptom, neurological symptom, hemorrhagic rashes, dense rashes with or without mucosal lesion, or who smokes cigarette, has a chronic lung disease, who is immunocompromised, or in case of second half of the pregnancy, you have to refer this case to the MDT for further management and evaluation. And regarding the delivery, you have to wait for 7 days after onset of rashes, and you can provide her epidural and spinal anesthesia, but the site of injection should be free from cutaneous lesion. Regarding the risk of the baby, first 28 weeks, there is a chance of fetal varicella syndrome. So in that case, you have to refer the case to the fetal maternal unit at 16 to 20 weeks or 5 weeks after the infections for detailed scan to rule out any kind of anomalies. And in the last 4 weeks of the pregnancy, there is also a significant risk of varicella infection of the pregnancy. So it's mostly occur within 7 days of onset of the rashes, or after delivery of within 7 days. If the mother develops rashes, there's a high risk of infections. So you have to wait for 7 days after onset of rashes to reduce the risk of varicella infection of the newborn. And during delivery, you need to inform the neonatologist. So you can see that this is a very beautiful chart. You can also see it in your guideline. In the last page, you can see it. You can print out all these charts, because all the gist things are written in this guideline, this chart. So you can read it from there. Like any kind of varicella zoster contact, you have to clarify the significance of the contact. And if there is any kind of past history of the chickenpox, that means she is already immune, no need of any actions. only reassure and return to the normal antenatal care. That means if she has any past history of chickenpox, you need not to do anything, just only you have to reassure her because she's already immune. But if she is uncertain or no past history of chickenpox, or the woman from a tropical or subtropical country, then you have to check the blood for fetal varicella zoster immunoglobulin. And if the immunoglobulin is already, IgG is already present, that means she is already immune. So you can only reassure her. But if she is not immune, then you have to provide her a fetal varicella zoster immunoglobulin if less than 10 days since contact, or if the continuous exposure. That means within 10 days you have to give the fetal varicella zoster. Less than 10 days since the appearance of the rashes in the index. That means within 10 days you have to give the varicella zoster immunoglobulin, and we have to inform her that she is potentially infectious for 8 to 28 days after the contact of after the contact. So she should avoid the contact of any pregnant woman and also any neonates, and discuss the postpartum varicella immunization. That means after the delivery they can give a varicella zoster immunoglobulin. And when she developed the chicken pox, despite a varicella zoster immunoglobulin, then she should avoid the contact for potentially susceptible individual like neonates and other pregnant women. You have to provide her some symptomatic treatment, like if she's in develop any high fever, then you have to give her a high paracetamol for that. And if the woman is present less than 24, that is within 24 hours, we can provide her a acyclovir. As I told you, it is not licensed, but it's completely safe in the pregnancy. So we can give her acyclovir within 24 hours of development of rashes. And that is about 800 milligram 5 times daily for 5 days. Dose is also very important. And you have to avoid the delivery at least 7 days since the rash appeared. That means you have to wait for at least 7 days after the onset of rashes. And if there any kind of severe infection, then you have to give her an oral form, and you have to refer this case to the hospital, and you need to give her an IV acyclovir. That means in case of severe form, that means if she's already developed any kind of neurological problem, any breathing problem, any kind of hemorrhagic rashes, so you have to refer this case to the hospital, and they should provide her an IV acyclovir. And as I told you, if the patient is less than 28 weeks, there is a chance of fetal varicella syndrome. So you have to refer this case to the fetal medicine specialist so that they will do a thorough ultrasound at 16 to 20 weeks or 5 weeks after the infections. And also you can do amniocentesis to detect the varicella DNA may be considered. Okay, so you can also produce the amniocentesis to detect the varicella DNA. That will be also discussed with the patient. If she is allowed, then you can also go for that also. So the gist topic is of this chickenpox is that first, if the patient is come to you with an exposure, then you have to rule out whether she's immune or whether she's not immune. Whether she's any kind of past history, then she's already immune, so there's no need to give anything. You can only reassure her. But if she is not immune, then you have to check the immunity by doing an varicella zoster immunoglobulin G. And if she is in positive for that, means if the varicella zoster immunoglobulin G is present to her, then you can only reassure her that she is already immune, no need to do anything. But if she's not immune, then you have to give her immunoglobulin. And after immunoglobulin, as you know, that 8 to 28 days she is infectious, so you have to advise them to avoid the contact with the other pregnant women and also the children. And if she already developed the chicken pox, then you have to advise her to avoid to the other susceptible persons like like children or the pregnant woman. And you have to give her an acyclovir within 24 hours of rash development, and that is about 800 milligram 5 times daily for 5 days. And it is, though it's not licensed in pregnancy, but it's completely safe in the pregnancy. And in case of late trimester, you have to wait for at least 7 days after the onset of rashes to reduce the risk of neonatal varicella syndrome. And in case of less than 28 weeks, as you know, that there's a small risk of any congenital malformation like microcephaly, eye problem, limb defect. So you have to refer this case to the fetal-maternal specialist, and they will do a detailed scan at 16 to 20 weeks or 5 weeks after the infections. Or you can also consider amniocentesis to rule out the infections. So this is the in short about the management of varicella zoster. So you can see it's very easy to read. If you read like this way, it is very easy, and when you discuss these things with your partner, then that will be very easy for you to memorize. Okay, so anybody have any question up to this? Okay, so we can discuss one question so that we can understand. Any volunteer, anybody want to answer this question? Dr. Tamina, you can unmute your mic. Dr. Noreen, yes, Dr. Tamina,
Two.
yes, how are you? Hello.
If it is at 15 weeks, then we have to refer to fetal maternal unit for detailed scan.
No, I'm requesting. Do you ask me any question or do you read this question?
No, I'm telling you, if it is at 15 weeks, then we can refer her to the FMU.
Yes, in that case, you have to wait for 5 weeks after the rash development, because you need to do at least you have to wait for 18 to 20 weeks to do a detailed scan. So that's why you have to wait for at least 5 weeks after the onset of rashes. Okay.
Hmm.
In any kind of less
Yeah.
than 28, in any kind of less than 28 weeks, you have to refer this case to the fetal maternal unit, and according to the gestation, you have either you can wait for 5 weeks or you can do a anomaly scan at 16 to 20 weeks. Okay, that will depend upon the gestation. So Dr. Tamina, can you read this question for all?
Yeah, I can.
Yes.
You receive a telephone call from the community midwife, a 22-year-old primary gravida, 15 weeks pregnant, developed chicken pox and rash, had developed 72 hours ago. The mother is anxious and midwife request advice with regard of further management. So what would you advise? A. To inform the mother about the risk of varicella syndrome and advise termination of pregnancy once she overcomes the infective stage. To reassure the mother and a course of cyclovir to be obtained from the GP. To reassure the mother and arrange for immunoglobulin administration from GP. Then to reassure mother that the risk of spontaneous miscarriage is not increased and arrange referral to feto-maternal specialist for further advice and a detailed scan. To reassure that the risk of spontaneous miscarriage is not increased and arrange referral to FMU, feto-maternal specialist for amniocentesis to rule out varicella syndrome. For me, it is D answer.
That is to reassure the mother the
Hello?
risk is not increased and arrange referral to the fetum of the further advice and the detailed ultrasound. Because you can see here
Yeah,
it is about 15 weeks pregnant and she's developed chicken
yeah.
pox, and the rash is already
Mm,
developed within 72 hours. That means there is no role of acyclovir because you have to provide an acyclovir within 24 hours. Okay.
mm.
So
Okay.
it's already 72 hours gone. So only these things that you can reassure her, and you can do that is you can refer the case to the fetal-maternal unit 5 weeks after that. So what we can
Mm,
answer is the acyclovir should be used cautiously before 12 weeks, and it is only effective if it is commenced within 24 hours of the rash is developed. That means I already told you the acyclovir is not effective in this case because it's already 72 hours gone. So it's not effective in this case. Varicella zoster immunoglobulin is not effective in active infection and is only be used if the mother is not immune and has the significant exposure. For that means varicella zoster, as you know, that if the patient is exposed to any chickenpox patient, only in that case you can give, not in the active infections. Amniocentesis is not routinely advised as the risk of varicella syndrome is low. That means your answer is right. You can reassure her that there is no risk of spontaneous miscarriage, because we already read that there is no risk of miscarriage, only there is a risk of small risk of fetal varicella syndrome. So in that case, you have to refer this case to the fetal medicine specialist unit for further detailed scan. Okay. So you can see that the question is very easy. You have to only read it very carefully. Like you have to read it
Yeah,
in
so
the chicken pox. So in the
correct answer.
sorry, can you repeat your question? What you were saying? Okay, so in this question, you can see here that is she's only 15 weeks pregnant and she's already developed chicken pox. So what we actually do in the chicken pox? We actually do a chicken pox. We actually advise them to avoid contact and we advise them to take an acyclovir if it is within 24 hours of onset of rashes. And we told you that in case of less than 28 weeks, we usually do that's a detailed scan. That's why we had referred this case to the fetal-maternal specialist. And within 28 weeks, we see that there's only small risk of fetal varicella syndrome. There is no risk of any miscarriage. So in this case, you can see she's very much anxious about the miscarriage. So we can at least reassure her there's no risk of increased risk of miscarriage. And as already 72 hours gone, so you cannot give her a acyclovir. So acyclovir is not be benefited in this case. And also immunoglobulin you cannot give in this case. In case of active lesion, there is no role of immunoglobulin. And as it is a 15 week, that means less than 28 weeks. So in this case, you have to refer the case to the fetal-maternal specialist for further advice and detailed ultrasound. So I think this is the way you have to read. In each and every point of the guideline is very important. In each and every point of the question is very important. So as you can see here, it is already 72 hours gone. So if you think that it's already chickenpox developed, so we have to give an acyclovir, no. Because the duration is very important. Because if it is within 24 hours, then only you can give. Otherwise, there's no role of giving any acyclovir if it is more than 24 hours. So thank you all. This is our small introductory session. This is the way we actually discuss with you in each and every question that will help you to understand the guideline to clear out your the points of the guideline. I think you all enjoy the introductory session. Anybody have any
we
question?
all enjoy.
Yes. Anybody have any question?
Hello, Juma.
Yes.
In after finishing every module, will you discuss question every day?
Yes, in every module, every day we will discuss the questions like in the strategy questions, so that will help you to understand about the guideline like this way.
If you discuss the EMQ, it will very helpful as because I failed the EMQ portion in part 2.
Yes, we also discussed the EMQ part, and now in the exam we are more focused. We will give you the more question in the EMQ because we also see that's our students. Most of the student will fail due to of EMQ. So EMQ part we are now very much concerned about that, and we will focus on that also.
I am very depressed as because only 2 marks.
Yes, don't be, because there is a chance you can pass in next exam. Appa.
Okay, I will communicate with you. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody have any question? Anything you want to ask?
Hello.
Hello. Yes.
Are you going to teach the CTG too in your
Yes.
course?
Hello. Hi, Dr. Juma. How are you?
Yes, I'm fine. Yes, first thing is that we definitely teach you the CTG, and because this is a very important part of the labor module, so
Yes. We got almost 5 questions in the
yes,
last
CTG
exam.
is very important. CTG is
Thank
very,
you.
very important. So we definitely discuss these things in the labor module. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Hello, Dr. Azra. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Yes, after a long time, I listen you.
Yeah, inshallah, this time again I will give an exam in July.
Okay.
So,
Best of
what
luck.
is your now any discount with us?
Okay,
Old
so
customers.
I will discuss these things. I will text you on Telegram. We will talk
Oh,
in there. Okay.
okay, thank you. Please send a recording of the session. I did not attend. I was
Okay,
late.
definitely. Okay, okay, definitely.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, okay.
So,
Bye.
bye.
Okay, so thank you all. And for today, I think it's enough. I will also send you the recording of that. If anybody missed any part of this today's class, you can listen from also there. So if you have any question from anything, you can also ask in the group. I will also answer that question in there. Okay, bye.